Okay, so, you sent me all this stuff about how we read and how we learn, and I gotta say,
Mm.
it really got me thinking.
Yeah,
You know, we read all the time,
we do.
but are we really doing it well?
That's a good question.
So in this deep dive, we're going to look at these reading methods and figure out how to learn better and faster
Right.
without, you know,
Yeah,
feeling totally overwhelmed by all the stuff we got to read.
absolutely.
The thing is,
Yeah.
reading isn't just one thing.
No, it's not.
Like, there are different ways to do it.
Exactly. And, your sources, especially this Shiva Narayan Takshila,
Yeah.
they talk about three types of reading: surface reading, deep reading, and critical reading.
Okay, so like different tools for different jobs.
Exactly.
Like, I wouldn't use a hammer to put in a screw.
You wouldn't.
So are these different types of reading? Are they like using the right tool for the job
That's a great analogy.
when we're trying to really, learn something,
Yeah, when you want to actually understand
understand it?
and remember it. Yeah, that's where these different approaches come in.
So let's start with surface reading.
Okay, so surface reading is like,
It sounds like it's kind of a quick first look,
right, it's like getting the lay of the land.
like when you pick up a magazine
Uh-huh.
and you just kind of flip through it,
Yeah, you skim through the articles, see what catches your eye.
see it looks interesting.
Exactly.
So what's the point of that kind of reading?
Well, it's really useful for several things.
Okay.
First, it gives you a general idea of what the topic is about.
Okay.
The big picture.
So you can decide if you even want to read it more closely.
Exactly.
But-
Also, it helps you see how the information is organized,
Okay.
like where the key sections are, what the main points are.
So it's like making a mental map.
Exactly, like a roadmap for the information.
Okay, cool.
And then it's also good for increasing your reading speed
Uh-huh.
when you just need to skim for specific information.
So like when you're doing research.
Right, when you're trying to find something specific. So those are some of the main reasons why surface reading is important.
Okay, so how do we actually do this surface reading thing?
Well, there are a few key things to focus on.
Okay.
First, look at the headings and subheadings.
Right.
Those are like the signposts.
Okay,
They tell you what the main topics are.
got it.
Then pay attention to bolded words and bullet points.
Yeah, those usually stand out.
Right. They highlight the key terms and concepts.
Okay.
Another good tip is to skim the introduction and conclusion.
Yeah.
You can usually get the main gist of the argument from those.
Okay.
And then a really efficient technique is to just read the first and last sentences of each paragraph.
Oh, really?
A lot of times the main idea is right there in those sentences.
So you don't have to read the whole paragraph.
Not for surface reading.
Okay, that's a good tip.
And then don't forget about charts, diagrams, pictures, things like that.
Yeah, those could be helpful.
They often convey a lot of information visually.
So it's like looking at a map.
Yeah.
Before you decide which route you're going to take.
Precisely.
You see the big landmarks,
Uh.
but you don't worry about every little turn.
Right. You're just getting the overview.
Okay, so when is this surface reading most helpful?
Well, it's really useful when you're starting a new textbook
Yeah.
or any kind of long piece of writing.
Okay.
It gives you that initial framework.
Uh-huh.
And then it's also great for research
Oh.
when you're trying to see if an article or a book is even relevant to what you're looking for.
So you don't waste time reading something you don't need.
Exactly.
Okay, good tip.
And then one more thing, it's also a good way to review material before you do a deeper dive.
Oh, so like before you really study something.
Yeah, it helps you refresh your memory on the overall structure.
Okay, so surface reading is like the first step.
It's like the reconnaissance mission.
Yeah. Okay, so we've done our surface reading. We've got the overview now. Let's talk about deep reading.
All right, so deep reading is where we really get into the nitty-gritty.
So this is like when we really want to learn something.
Yeah, when you want to understand it deeply and remember it for the long haul.
It's not just about reading the words. It's about getting the concepts.
Exactly. It's about making those connections in your brain.
And the source talks about building a mental map
Right. It's like creating a framework in your mind.
for all this new information.
Exactly. And the goal here is to really master the material.
Okay, so we're not just skimming anymore
No, this is about really engaging with the text.
and thinking about it.
Yeah, asking questions, making connections.
So it's a lot more active?
Much more active.
Okay, so how do we do this deep reading thing?
The first thing is to slow down.
Okay.
Don't try to rush through it.
Take your time.
Take your time. Really focus on each sentence, each paragraph.
Okay.
And then another important thing is to take notes.
Uh-huh.
As you're reading, summarize the key points in your own words.
Okay, so that forces you to think about it.
Exactly. It helps you process the information and make it your own.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the source also talks about this idea of brainpage writing.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. What is that?
It's kind of like taking notes, but it's more about structuring the information in your memory.
Oh, so it's like building a mental framework.
Yeah, it's about creating those connections between different
So
ideas.
it's not just jotting down facts. It's about organizing them in your mind.
Exactly. And that makes it much easier to recall the information later.
Oh, that's cool.
And then there's another technique called cyclicide rehearsal.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
It is, but it's basically about revisiting the material at spaced intervals.
Oh, so like space repetition.
Exactly. You reinforce the learning over time.
Okay, so it's not just reading it once and hoping for the best.
No, it's about coming back to it again and again.
To make sure it sticks.
Right.
Okay, and the source also talks about asking questions.
Yes, that's a key part of deep reading.
Like as you're reading.
As you're reading, you should be asking yourself questions about the material.
Like, why is this important?
Yeah, or how does this relate to what I already know?
Or what are the implications of this?
Right, those kinds of questions really help you engage with the information.
And understand it better.
Exactly.
So deep reading is really about getting that deep understanding.
It's about mastering the material.
And building those strong connections in your brain.
Precisely.
Okay, so when is this deep reading most useful?
Well, it's especially important when you're learning something new and complex.
Okay.
Something that you really need to grasp thoroughly.
So like a new subject in school.
Right, or a new skill that you're trying to learn.
Great.
And it's also really valuable when you're preparing for in-depth discussions or project work.
So you need to know the material inside and out.
Exactly.
And then also for technical or scientific stuff.
Yes, anything that requires a really solid understanding of the fundamentals.
Okay, so if you really want to know something, deep reading is the way to go.
It's the key to building that strong foundation.
Okay, so we've covered surface reading and deep reading now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about critical reading.
All right, so critical reading takes things to another level.
It sounds like it's about not just understanding, but also analyzing,
Exactly. It's about evaluating the information, questioning it,
thinking for yourself,
thinking for yourself.
not just taking everything at face value.
Right. You're looking for the author's arguments,
Okay.
their assumptions, their biases.
And then deciding whether you agree with them.
Exactly. You're thinking critically about the information.
So it's like being a detective,
Yeah, you're examining the evidence,
looking for clues
looking for clues.
to see if the author's case holds up.
Right. And this is really important for problem solving
Okay.
and for being a well-informed citizen.
So how do we actually do this critical reading thing?
Well, one technique is to highlight or underline key points as you're reading.
Okay. Similar to deep reading.
Yeah, but here you're focusing on the author's claims and the evidence they use to support them.
Okay, so you're marking up the text
Marking it up.
to show the structure of the argument.
Right.
Okay.
And then another important thing is to compare different sources.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Different perspectives on the same topic.
You can see the different sides of the issue.
Right, and you can start to form your own opinion.
Okay.
And then you should also be asking yourself questions as you're reading.
Uh-huh.
Like, what is the author's main point?
Okay.
What are they assuming?
Uh-huh.
Is there any bias in their perspective?
Okay.
Those kinds of questions really help you dig deeper.
So you're not just accepting everything you read.
Right. You're engaging with the material critically.
And then the source also mentions working through practice exercises.
Yes, that can be really
It's
helpful.
like answering questions or doing problems related to the material.
Exactly. It helps you apply the information and see if you really understand it.
Okay. And then there's also the idea of peer discussions,
Yeah, talking about the material with other people,
like study groups.
study groups, or even just casual conversations.
Okay.
Because when you have to explain something to someone else, it really forces you to think it through.
And it exposes any gaps in your understanding.
Right.
Okay, so when is critical reading most useful?
Well, it's really important for exam preparation because you need to be able to analyze and apply the information.
Not just memorize it.
Right.
Okay.
And it's also crucial when you're evaluating research papers or academic articles.
Because you need to assess the quality of the research.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then finally, it's also really helpful when you're forming your own arguments.
Like for a debate or presentation.
Exactly.
Okay, so critical reading is all about thinking critically,
And being an active reader.
not just a passive consumer of information.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've talked about these three different ways of reading.
Surface reading, deep reading, critical reading.
And the source also talks about this idea of brain page development.
Yeah, that's kind of the ultimate goal.
It sounds like it's about building a strong mental framework
Exactly. It's about organizing the information in your mind.
so you can access it easily.
Right, and use it effectively.
And all three types of reading contribute to this brain page development. So it's like a three-stage process.
Yeah, you could think of it that way.
Surface reading is like the first stage.
Right. It's like scanning the terrain,
Yeah, the overview.
the big picture.
Okay.
And then deep reading is the second stage.
Where you really build the structure.
Yeah, you lay the foundation.
You make those connections.
Right.
And then critical reading is the final stage.
Where you refine and sharpen your understanding.
So you can use the information effectively.
Exactly.
So it's like building a house.
I like that analogy.
Surface reading is like looking at the blueprints. Deep reading is like constructing the frame and the walls.
Okay.
And critical reading is like putting on the finishing touches.
Yeah, making sure everything is in place.
Making it livable.
Yeah, making it functional.
And the source says that mastering all three of these reading types is essential for academic success.
It's not just about getting good grades.
It's about really learning and understanding.
Exactly.
And being able to use that knowledge in the real world.
Yeah.
So it's not just for students.
No, it's for anyone who wants to learn and grow.
Okay, so to sum up,
Yeah.
we've got surface reading for getting the overview, deep reading for really understanding and remembering,
Right.
and critical reading for analyzing and applying.
Exactly.
And all of these contribute to building that strong mental framework, that brain page.
That's the key.
And the source encourages us to think of reading as an active process,
Not passive.
not just sitting there and absorbing information.
Right. You have to engage with it.
Ask questions.
Make connections.
Think critically.
Exactly.
So it's like a workout for your brain.
Yeah, you got to use those mental muscles.
So as you go forward in your learning journey,
Yeah.
think about how you can use these different reading methods.
To really maximize your learning.
What kind of brain page are you trying to build?
That's a great question to ask yourself.
And if you want to explore this even further, the source mentions something called a Takshila page
Yeah.
and system learnography.
That might be something worth checking out.
If you're really interested in this whole framework.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.